You've lost the beard, mate, and you've lost the hat, but other than that, you're looking fighting fit. Tell us what your problem is with Dan Andrews' lockdown.
This whole restriction on sole operators on site is ridiculous. The original stage 4 lockdown, based on expert medical advice, was that our people pose no danger to public health at all. There is no reason for the difference between council workers who do the same jobs working in groups and our people alone. If they're safe, then why are our people not safe? Even the council workers themselves have been in support of it. We've had no answer to this question. Why cannot people work?
So just, Jim, for the rest of Australia who hasn't been suffering the Victorian lockdown, so what's happened is that in Victoria, Dan Andrews said that sole traders, such as people mowing the lawn, could not work, yet they have council workers out there mowing the lawn. You're going to sue the government.
Well, actually, what we're doing is we're going to help our franchisees to claim compensation from the government, writing a letter and then appealing it to our appeals, which is VCAT. We don't know whether it'll work or not, but that's one answer for sure.
And so, with small business people, how many are suffering? How many people work for Jim's various franchisees, individual sole traders? How many in Victoria who are now out of work thanks to this?
We think about 700. But don't forget, this is only tip of the iceberg. There are thousands, tens of thousands more. There's at least 4,000 gardening contractors in the state, plus cleaners, pool care, the rest. There's a lot of people out of work for no reason at all.
Rita?
They do seem to be very cavalier about people's livelihoods, don't they? Just wiping out entire industries. And yet I can every morning go and get a coffee from a barista who then hands it to the waitress, who then hands it to me. We're all handling the one coffee cup, but someone mowing a lawn who will never even see the homeowner. I mean, can you have you had it explained to you the medical reasoning behind these decisions?
No, absolutely not. I have asked the Premier. The Premier can't tell me. Bureaucrats can't tell me. Politicians can't tell me. No member of the public has ever tried to explain this ridiculous regulation, this ridiculous restriction. Our people are not a danger to public health. They're more of a danger if they go home unemployed, because then they can go out and buy coffee, they can go for a walk, they can go for a run. All of these things are far more danger to public health. This is just politics alone. There's no other explanation for it. Nobody's even tried to justify this absurd measure.
James.
Have you had much success in getting through and talking to the Andrews government about this? Because I've heard a lot of business people say that they don't really care to talk to private industry. They don't have many relations with private industry. And do you think that the Andrews government basically suffers a left-wing, for lack of a better term, obsession that prefers public service jobs to private sector ones?
Oh, absolutely they do. I couldn't help but laugh when the Premier says he consults with private business. Listen, I am the only person that represents tens of thousands of small traders throughout this state, and the Premier hasn't even given me a two-word reply. He doesn't even acknowledge my letters except some ridiculous thing that everybody gets when he doesn't want to give an answer. There's no attempt to listen at all.
So, Jim, I assume that the Dan Andrews lawns and the government lawns are all looking spick and span, and that would be, of course, on the public purse. Tell me the worst stories you've heard from your people, from sole traders who are suffering because of the Dan Andrews government.
Look, I know one franchisee whose son has attempted suicide, whose daughter is in deep depression, whose neighbour's son is actually in a coma, probably suicide. There's a girl who is actually facing eviction from her home. She's on doesn't get government welfare because she's on a bridging visa. She's cadging the neighbours to get food. We've offered her to come and stay at our conference centre if she gets evicted. But, I mean, it's terrible, the suffering that's going on.
Rita?
I'm just wanting to know what your chances of success are. What is the legal advice you're receiving about challenging this stuff, or at least getting some form of compensation for all the people who've been needlessly put out of work?
Well, compensation will be months down the track, if at all, because obviously they got 28 days to say no, and you've got to go to VCAT, and that's going to be a huge delay. And from what I've been told, the government pretty well controls VCAT, and they can tell them what to do by putting various pressures on them. I don't know. But look, it can't help. It can't help people right now. By the time this all gets through, it'll be next year. It's too late to ease this dreadful suffering. We need answers now. I'm just hoping the Premier sees sense and reverses this ridiculous restriction today.
Well, we've got the Premier coming up right after this program with that press conference explaining what's going to happen next after September 13. What are you hearing? There's already been leaks of the document. It looks like it's more of the same.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't heard anything specifically. Obviously, there are thousands of people hanging on his every word, but there's no certainty about what's going to happen. I tell you what's going to happen is that people cannot stand this much longer. You're going to start getting mass civil disobedience. You can't impose restrictions that are so arbitrary and unfair and obviously politically motivated that it's nothing to do with the infection. It's all to do with arbitrary political power and favouring your own people, favouring the unions, favouring the well-connected against the small business people.
Jim Penman, we can hear the pain and anger in your voice, and I'm sure that is reflection of the pain and anger in so many sole traders, small business people and others simply wanting to do a decent day's work all around Australia, but particularly in those lockdown states. Jim Penman, thanks so much for coming on Outsiders.
Thank you, and thank you for getting the message out. It's so important.
Thanks, mate.